Hi there, my lovely friends. How are you doing this week? And today we're talking about listening to your readers. And if you think that sounds a little strange, then keep listening because it's actually could be useful advice. Now, first off, I've got to qualify this by saying that a reader review is not written for you. Oh, look at that. Aren't I getting clever today? But a reader review is written for other readers. That is an industry standard. Everybody understands it, from authors to readers alike. When somebody leaves a review on your Amazon sales page or similar, perhaps Goodreads, the idea is that that review was written for other readers. The good, the bad, the ugly, it doesn't matter. It wasn't written for you, the author. However, authors are human for the most part, and it's human nature for us to want to take a peek. And this is, in one respect, where you can get some very necessary feedback about your new novel, particularly if you are a new author. Now, the first thing I would point out is please get somebody else to look at those reviews, not you. It takes a while to develop a thick skin that an author needs to be able to put up with some of the pushback they get against their wonderful darlings, namely the books they've spent hours, weeks, sometimes years writing. You don't want to be going in and hunting out negative reviews. Honestly, it does your mental health no good at all. And as I say, those reviews weren't written for you, they were written for other readers. But if you can get somebody to go in and have a look, and if perhaps there are some negative reviews, then you could ask your friend, colleague, family member, whoever, to have a look and see if there are any recurring themes. Maybe there's some situation that you've handled in a book that perhaps could have been done a bit more sensitively. Maybe you have a common grammatical error that your editor hasn't picked up, and just for some reason this has grated on a reader's, it's interrupted their reading pleasure. Now, this does happen. And if you find more than one incidence of this being mentioned, then that is something then you might have to think to yourself, well, okay, I need to do something about that. Now, admittedly, as an author, you're entitled to write whatever content you want, and it is fully accepted that authors will stand by their content. But reader feedback can be really valuable, and it's a useful tool for helping you to grow as an author. Just because you've written one book, or maybe two or three even, it doesn't mean you know all there is to know about writing a book. As you know, if you've been following my channel, I have written over 100 books, and I still am learning. And that's one of the great things about being an author, is that you continually learn to grow, both as a writer and as a person. And I know the books that I wrote way back when, although the way I develop my characters and my storylines are very similar, the way I convey those scenes and things now, well, in some respects, they're a bit more concise. In other respects, they're a bit more wordy. For example, when I wrote my first two books, I had to go back when I got to the end of the book and fill in basic descriptions, because I was so keen on getting dialogue down or that sort of thing. I didn't put in any descriptions, and my characters could have played out the entire book in this holorless void that nobody was aware of any setting or that atmosphere that comes from place. Yeah, all that was totally missing from my books. And I had to go back and put those in. But I did that before I put the book out. And as I say, my first couple of books were never edited at all. And boy, was that a mistake. But I've talked about that to death as well. But the thing is what you want to look at is constructive criticism. And I have spoken about this before, but I do believe it bears repeating. As I mentioned, in my first book, I wrote a book set in the United States. Now, if you listen to my accent, you will realize that I have never been to the United States. I write my books set in the United States because they have predatory animals that I required to make my shifters plausible. I know, it's just one of those things. It's what I write. But I was born in the UK and I have lived in New Zealand for most of my life. So the words I use are a combination of Britishisms and Kiwiisms. And the Americans have a totally different English language. I wouldn't have learnt about that. I wouldn't have learnt how to make changes to the mistakes I made without a reviewer pointing it out. So it is very, very useful, especially when you're a new author, to look at the constructive criticism that might be offered on something that you could improve on. Now, this doesn't just apply to reviews. As you become more confident in your role as an author and in what you do as you write various books, because we're not going to write just one, are we? Remember what I said about series books. You can start to be more comfortable in your community of readers. I have quite often written a note for my readers at the back of my books, asking them, should I continue with this? Should this be a duology? Should this be a trilogy? Did you want to read more about these characters? And that feedback is really valuable. It lets me know whether or not it's worth investing the time and effort to write more on those stories, on those characters, or whether my readers would prefer something new. I have also found in the last, it's almost 2 years now, I think I've had a Patreon. And I'm quite often, I'll be stuck on something in my story and I will throw up a little poll or a question in my Patreon and just say, oh, hey, I'm trying to do this. Should this be this or this? And I'll give them a couple of options. No more than that, because you don't want to get things complicated. But the feedback that you get from that sort of thing is absolutely invaluable to your journey as an author. So, as I say, take the time to listen to what your readers are telling you, whether it be in reviews or whether it be in, personal DMs, comments under your social media posts or things like that. Look for ways that you can grow as an author by listening to the readers who are enjoying your work. And remember that they need some way to get in touch with you. So please make sure your contact details are at the back of every one of your books. Engaging your readers in the writing process not only allows them to feel valued, but it also encourages them to get excited about the next book you're putting out. And one last little point. If you're worried that your reviews are overall bad, and yes, that does happen sometimes, because sometimes something you write just falls flat, look again for that creative criticism of what went wrong. But realistically, if you've got 10 or 20 reviews and your score is over 3.5 on the rating system, you're doing okay. Your words are landing with some people, and your first book might not land perfectly every time, But if you listen to your readers, your next one will be better, and then the next one will be better after that. So please, I was going to close off, but I got to say one more thing. Do not engage. Authors do not have the right to infringe on reader spaces, namely review platforms. Do not engage. Do not respond. No matter how badly you'll get the urge to do so. And especially, do not go posting a negative review on your social media and complain about it. That is totally unfair. Now, I have to admit, when was it? About 8 years ago, I did do that. But I posted it in a private group that was just my readers. And in my defense, what I was upset about with the review was it was the day after launch day. I went in to see if anybody had bought it, and I had one-star review. And I was like, what the fuck? What happened? So I scrolled down to read that somebody had written that they wanted to read that book, but they didn't buy it because they found out I had turned a couple into a throuple, and they did not agree with that. So they hadn't read it, they hadn't bought it, but when they saw that it was out and read the blurb, they immediately went down and left me a 1-star review because they didn't like the fact it was MMM. And I was very upset. But I didn't call for their witch hunt on that person. No. There's a little button underneath reviews that says, is this helpful? And I just clicked the down button. And when I go back and look at that sales page now, that 1-star review is buried under about 100 odd positive reviews. But as an author, it is really hard when you're trying to you're trying to get ahead in your career. But if you have to stay professional, which means never responding. And if somebody tags you in a review, that is actually them who are doing the wrong thing. Again, do not respond. But if you can learn something by covertly looking at those spaces, looking at what is said publicly, because that's the only rights you have to that information, and you can learn something from it. When I'm writing about a car, I still have to stop and think, does a car have a bonnet or a hood? I'm fairly sure in New Zealand, we have a bonnet. And in America, we have a hood. Well, you guys have a hood. But if I'm wrong, let me know in the comments, because and it's the same with couch and settee. Apparently Americans don't have settees, they have couches. And they don't have lounges, they have living rooms. I learned that from my readers, and I am truly grateful for that. So listen to your readers. Welcome them into your writing process within reason. And you will find that your career and your readership will grow as a result of doing that. Now, am I wrong? Let me know in the comments. Have I got some of those terms around the wrong way? Let me know that in the comments as well. I post long form content on Mondays and Thursdays. And I'd really love it if you subscribed, or if you at least tickled the like button on your way out, if you found any of this helpful at all. But in the meantime, my friends, please just keep writing. You've got a great career ahead of you as an author, but you have to get that book written first. Until next time, my friends. Bye.